you are the guy on the history of pirates. So if people saw the Netflix docuseries that came out, whose name I always forget what that was called.
Lost Pirate Kingdom,
That's
I think.
it. That's it. So that came out, I think, like last year or something like that.
Yeah, it might
Couple
be
years
2
ago.
years ago now, yeah.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. But you were one of the experts in that. And when you go through Wikipedia pages of some of the famous pirates, it'll start with, like, according to historian Colin Woodard. Like, this is something that you broke wide open. But how did you even get into covering this? Like, what was the backstory there? It's so cool. It's such an out there topic.
Yeah, I mean, originally I wanted to use the pirates for my own agenda. I was I'd written previous books that dealt with U.S. colonial history, and that to truly understand America and its problems and why it's the way it is, all the answers are in the colonial period, which Americans don't know very well. And I was trying to find a way to draw a mass audience into this weird colonial world that's not as you think it is, right? Your impressions and what you learned in school is not it, and it's much more fascinating, bizarre, and explanatory. You understand today much better. What could I use to draw a mass audience in, right? Dinosaurs are too early, right? The pirates, right? They're perfect. They're occupying this golden age of piracy I write about, which is in sort of 1715 to 1720, 1725, is right in the middle of the colonial period. And these pirates were operating out of the Bahamas and the Caribbean, yes, but their range of operations was they were raiding ships, all the way up to Newfoundland and New England, and all the way down to the Spanish Main, the coast of what's now Venezuela and Peru. And they're involved in raiding slave ships in the African slave trade. Many of them are from the old
slave
world,
ships.
because slave ships end up being perfect for use as pirate vessels. And in some cases, and we can get into that later, enslaved people were eager to join the pirates had a degree of freedom they didn't have in a lot of other spaces then. So there were lots of reasons they were involved in that, and they were fencing their goods to all the colonial governors and various corrupted officials all over the place. So it bonded the whole transatlantic world together in all the themes. And I thought, I'll draw people into this world, and then they will be captivated by it and understand it. But then when I started researching the pirate story, it itself was so much stranger than the received story that I just kind of got hooked on that.
Yeah.
So I ended up going down the rabbit hole of pirate history because it's so fascinating by itself.
Well, let's talk about where it began. Because as you just alluded to there, you have a real specialty in the golden era, that 17 to 15 to 1725 part that we're going to talk about a lot today. But before then, it was kind of, it seems to me like a little bit of no man's land in a way, because you had guys who were privateers, which, if you don't mind, I'll have you explain that in a second. But then you also had like the term buccaneer, which I always thought was just like a pirate. Like if I had to say, stamp it down on a map, this was the first day pirates began. When do you think that was?
Yeah, I mean, there've always been pirates, right? The joke is it's the second oldest profession in the world. But, there are pirates in, ancient Rome. There were pirates in medieval Europe and in medieval China. There are pirates today. What distinguishes this group of pirates I'm talking about is that these are the pirates that are responsible for all that pirate pop culture imagery, the skull and crossbones, the R, the peg leg. It's this one group of pirates I write about who all knew each other, who operated out of a shared base in the Bahama Islands, and were active for just really a few years. But they were so effective, and they were so different from prior pirates and the pirates that have come since, that they captivated the popular imagination at the time and have really never let it go. And so that pirate crew, which I would say is distinct from other types of pirates, that really gets going in 1714, 1715. We can talk about how in the aftermath of a great big colonial war. And it was keying off a sort of early inspirational figure named Henry Avery, who had his big pirate exploits were in 1696, 1697. And I'd say he's the individual and the figure that sort of creates the proof of concept and the role model for this next generation of pirates that kind of burst into fruition and, altered the world and give us this sort of culture of the pirate anti-hero.
What was Henry Avery's background? Like, where was he from?
So Henry Avery was English, and he was he'd served in the Royal Navy and was in the late 1690s an officer on a ship that had been commissioned. It was kind of a business deal between some very powerful people in England and the Spanish government during a time of peace to create a trade expedition that could make a whole pile of money because it would be the first English trade, connected with Spain and would be conducted under the King of Spain's rule. And anyway, he was a legitimate officer in this fleet of vessels. And then the owners basically screwed him and his crew over and were going to kind of leave them to become sort of prisoners of the Spanish and not pay them. And he led a mutiny because they had been so cheated. Yeah, a mutiny. And he seized the vessel that he was on in the harbor in Corona, Spain, and escaped under the guns of a fort, and then sailed out of Spain and around the Horn of Africa, and started this crazy and kind of terrifyingly brutal raids of shipping coming in and out of the Red Sea. And his most famous capture that kind of vaulted him into mythology was capturing the treasure ship that belonged to the Grand Mogul of India, essentially the ruler of India at the time. His vessel that was coming, from the pilgrimage to Mecca, loaded with all kinds of treasures and stuff, and some of the ruler's relatives. Henry Avery and his crew captured this vessel and a pile of treasure worth just staggering sums. An empire, an imperial fortune. And what made him sort of a mythological figure is he kind of got away with it, right? They took this treasure and his men kind of scattered, and there was an all-points bulletin out for him because the most powerful forces in England, the most powerful interests were the English East India Company. And the East India Company was trading in India, and the Grand Mogul was, essentially the trading partner. Grand Mogul is furious. An English pirate has, attacked his ship and killed crewmen and raped some of his family members and stolen all his treasure. He's furious and is actually sending troops to arrest English diplomats in India in the trading ports, and it cut off all trade. Whoa. So this has messed up global trade. It's messed up England's most important trade partnership. So Henry Avery is like the subject of the world's first global manhunt. Everyone's trying to get him, right? The entire English Empire, the Grand Mogul of India, capture this guy dead or alive. So everyone's trying to find him. And he is skedaddled out of the Red Sea, and he goes all the way to the last place anyone he thinks will be looking for him, which happens to be Nassau in the Bahama Islands.
Why do you think people wouldn't look for him there? This is out by where, the colonies are.
This is out in the Caribbean, right off the coast of Florida, half a world away from where everyone's really expecting him to be. And he goes there and shows up under the fort, and he goes to Nassau and the Bahamas are this impoverished backwater of an English colony. It's not a rich place. It's barely surviving. Later, it gets sacked in various wars. It's a third-rate colony and very weak and fragile. And English hold over it is pretty weak too. And the governor is a weak man, at least morally. Henry Avery. Claiming to be, a man named Captain Bridgman, and claiming to have found this vessel he's sailing on out in the sea, essentially says, "Hey, I've got a whole bunch of ivory tusks and rare gold and Arab coins and stuff. I'll give you a chunk of it, and I'll sell you. I'll throw in this ship if you, fence my goods and sell me some sloops, some escape vessels." And wink, wink, nudge, nudge. The governor essentially does that. So at the time when there's this global manhunt for Henry Avery, led by London and the court of St. James, one of England's own governors is buying the goods and selling him as getaway vehicles. Exactly. That's how the world operated
moolah,
then.
Baby.
You got it.
That's
and
it.
So
they're not taking care of him enough,
right. You got it. Men scattered. They sold the Grand Mogul's vessel to the governor, who ended up kind of leaving it on the shores of what's now Paradise Island in the Bahamas, but was then Hog Island. And they all skedaddle on small vessels. They go up the East Coast. Some of them end up in Philly. Some of them end up in Rhode Island briefly. But they all seem to be circling back to make a backstage return to England. Everyone's looking for them over in the Red Sea, and they've snuck all the way around and land in Ireland and then transport over Ireland and are coming back to England. Henry Avery is last seen with a whole big pile of treasure and another man's wife at a crossroads in Ireland, apparently bound towards the West Country of England, where he's from.
For him.
And poof, he disappears.
Love that. Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.